my channel. My name is Martine, and if you are new here, I do videos on Vedic astrology mainly, but also with some tropical insights, and I focus on both relationship and natal astrology. And if you like this video and you would like to hear more content from me, please like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video. And also, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you. So today is going to be kind of like a bonus video on a topic that just, presented itself to me, and I just suddenly had the idea I need to talk about this. This is basically a case study of a marriage of a friend of mine that has just gotten married last week, and I just stopped to think about her case for a little bit, and I think it's really interesting. It's an interesting case study, and I figured that I want to talk about it. Okay, you're gonna have to bear with me with this one because I have created a structure for it. So I'm just gonna talk about how I know this person, a little bit about her history, and with respect to relationships, relevant history, and then I'm gonna talk about her natal chart. So I'm mainly going to focus on her natal chart. Okay, I have also looked at her navamsha and other things, but since this is going to be more like a generalized case study video, I'm just going to look at the natal chart, and I'm going to look at transits. So it's going to be an interesting case study, I think. Okay, so I'm going to look at, first of all, her partner dispositors in the natal chart. I'm going to look a little bit at the upapada lagna, and then I'm going to look at transits. Okay, so I'm going to give you some pointers on how you can spot a good time to meet a person or to get married. Meet a person with respect to, starting a serious relationship. So I'm mainly going to focus on three topics. Okay, her natal chart, to do with nature of the spouse. So first of all, the nature of the spouse as described by her natal chart, and then where she will meet this person and how she met this person, so the place of meeting, and last but not least, the timing of when they met and when they got married. Okay, so the background history. Okay, so I met this person about 5 years ago, 2016, and we met at work. Okay, we were both relatively recently employed, and we just got together. We started hanging out, and we started getting along pretty well, and I have met her since then. So we have been co-workers during that time, and then I left and moved to another company, and then we met again at another company, and we also spent some time abroad as well together because we were on a foreign delegation to a foreign country together. So I know this person quite well. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay, and throughout the time when I have known her, so this is a person that is really religious. Okay, now I don't think like extremely narrow-minded or something, but she is pretty religious. Okay, so she's a devout Christian Orthodox, and she has been telling me like over the years that she wants to find a partner and get married. So she is 28 now. She just got married. Okay, and until she met her current partner, she had never had a relationship. So she met this person last year during the pandemic. So the apocalypse wasn't bad for everyone, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But basically, yeah, so throughout the times when I have met her, so she kept telling me, first of all, that we were hanging out in my city, which is a city, well, it's a pretty big city. And she was telling me, first of all, that she was not happy, that she would love to move back home, as in closer to her family, but she couldn't find a job there, so she had to stay here. So she was really not particularly happy about staying in the city, okay, because, I don't know, she was really close to her family, and she had to rent out a tiny little apartment here, whereas her family, well, they have a nice house in a small town with a garden and all that stuff, yada yada. And she's an only child. And this is all relevant information because I'm going to be referencing it with respect to her natal chart. And also, she was just telling me that she would love to start a family and that she was kind of getting impatient about potentially meeting the right person. And around probably like 2017, 2018, she did ask me about what her horoscope says about her potential partner. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about her chart. And you're hopefully going to see it on the screen. So, first of all, her chart, okay? What I told her about her partner at the time was, I just, quickly looked at her chart. Like, I remember it was yesterday. We were just hanging out, I think in a restaurant, and I just quickly did her chart, and I looked at it, and I said, well, first of all, I can say that you're going to meet this person through your family of origin, and most likely close to your hometown. And also your partner is very likely going to be older than you. Now, why did I say this? Because looking at her natal chart, looking at her partner dispositors, her partner signifiers, okay, however you want to call them. So the things that you look at in a natal chart that you can read your partner archetype by, okay? The 7th house and the 7th house ruler. To a lesser extent, the 5th house to see what you want in relationships, okay? And the 5th house ruler. But the main dispositors with respect to marriage are the 7th house ruler, Jupiter for women, Venus for men, and the dark arca. Okay, the dark arca, which is the planet with the lowest degree, and it is the partner signifier. These are the main things, okay? To a lesser extent, you can look for Mars for women because that shows the kind of man she's attracted to. And again, like I said, the 5th house, which shows the kind of partner that you would really want deep down, okay? The kind of partner that you would be attracted to romantically, most likely. Okay, so just looking for these things in her chart, you see that Saturn is in the 7th house by itself. So that most likely shows that the partner is going to be older. Okay, even though I don't think I considered it at the time, but her dark arca is Mercury. Okay, so, and Mercury is younger. Jupiter is also, a younger spouse, right? So if your dark arca is Mercury, it's quite likely that would be an indication that you're going to be with a younger spouse. However, in her case, there are some contradictions here, okay, in the D1 chart, because Saturn shows an older partner, and the rest of, Mercury is the dark arca in Cancer, so that shows a younger partner. Jupiter is a Virgo, which again is ruled by Mercury, that would show a younger partner. Okay, co-ruler of the 7th house is Rahu in Scorpio. This could go either way, but I basically would take the planet that is sitting in the 7th house, if there are planets sitting in the 7th house, to be really the strongest signifiers. Okay, so guess what? Towards summer of 2020, so we were working actually for the same company, but because of the pandemic, she moved back home finally, because within probably the first 3 months after March 2020, I think probably within 3 to 6 months after the lockdown in 2020, it was pretty clear to us that we were going to be in home office indefinitely, because they kept postponing it. At first they said it was 1 month, then 2 months, then the drill. And so she eventually decided to move back home with her parents, because she was sitting in the city and she was paying rent, and she was basically all alone in her apartment, and she really wasn't handling it well at all. And so she just decided to move back home. And in late summer, early autumn 2020, she met her current spouse. And guess what? She met this person while she was at church with her mother. And he is 7 years older than she is, okay? So basically, my prediction was accurate. However, it was not very precise, okay? And I'm going to get into more detailed analysis in a bit, okay? But basically, how do you see this? First of all, if you look at her D1 chart, right, most of her partner dispositors point towards meeting a person in the closer to home, like I said. So Jupiter in the second house, this shows that you're going to meet the husband somehow through the family of origin, okay? So the family of origin is going to introduce you, or they're going to be present, or they're going to know this person, okay? Fourth house, she has co-ruler of the seventh house in fourth house, Rahu, which is co-ruler of Aquarius, right? So fourth house shows, it could show a multitude of things, but it definitely shows homeland. So it shows close to the place of origin. The fourth house is the home, the mother, the mother's home, or the mother lineage, right? So she was with her mother when she met her husband. I'm not sure exactly because you didn't get too much into details about this actually, so I'm not 100% sure if her mother knew him before, or she just said that she met him at church, okay, with her mother, and there were mutual acquaintances there as well. And here's another thing. Ruler of Aquarius, Saturn, is sitting in the seventh house. So ruler of the seventh house in the seventh house. Seventh house means you're going to meet your partner somewhere in a formal setting. Okay, so the seventh house could mean a multitude of things, but mainly it shows a formal setting. So it means, like, again, could be something like acquaintances introducing you to this person, meeting this person in school or at work to some extent as well as at work, even though you may not think this, but the seventh house is 10th from the 10th house, so it's also one of the houses that is closely connected to career. It could also be like meeting a person at a wedding. But she met this person at church, okay? That's what she told me, okay? She didn't give too many details. And finally, there's the interesting part, which is Dharkarka Mercury is in the 12th house. So this is a little bit interesting, okay? It's a little bit contradictory here, you might think, because the 12th house shows faraway lands to some extent. However, the 12th house doesn't just show faraway lands, okay? It also shows places of isolation. It shows including religious places of worship, basically, religious temples. Any place where you go to get in touch with spirituality is also the 12th house, okay? So it could mean, basically it is connected to travel, but it can be just intellectual travel, so reaching higher realms of consciousness, and anything that is connected to spirituality is also the 12th house. Okay, so you might be tempted here. I would have been tempted, to be honest, if I didn't look at the rest of her chart and I didn't look at the upapada. I would have been tempted to just say it is likely that she's going to meet this person in a foreign land. Okay, but this is actually a situation where you're going to see how the upapada lagna helps a great deal in clarifying these things. Okay, and I'm going to get to that in a bit. But before I get, so basically I already covered the issue of where she's going to meet the spouse to some extent, but I kind of got ahead of myself, okay? According to the structure that I planned, I should have been talking first about the nakshatras, but okay. So I'm going to talk about the nakshatras now. Why the nakshatras? Because I was curious. Okay, why a clergy person? So her husband, right? I didn't say that. Her husband, she didn't just meet him in a church, but he is studying to become a priest. So he is going to be a member of the clergy, okay? A person who is religious. Now, for those of you who are a little bit confused, I'm just going to throw this in there. Priests in the Christian Orthodox faith are supposed to be married, okay? Only priests in the Catholic faith are supposed to practice celibacy. Because I know a lot of people don't know this, apparently. And also priests in the Christian Orthodox Church are expected to go to university. So you have to, I think it's called the theological university or something. You have to go to university to be a priest. So you can't just be like take a course. Like I know that to be a pastor, you just can take a course or like whatever, go to a few seminars, and you can find someone to ordain you as a pastor. But for the Christian Orthodox faith, it's a pretty big deal. Like there's an entire hierarchical stuff going on. So you have to go to university, you study a bunch of things, including philosophy. I don't know exactly what they study, but it's a pretty important thing. Like I think it's somewhere between, I don't even know exactly, like somewhere between 3 to 5 years of university to become a priest. And then you also have to go through certain rites, including marriage, because marriage is seen as a commandment for men. Not for women though. Okay, women can fly on a broomstick into a full moon. It's all in there. If you read the Bible backwards, I'm just kidding. Seriously though, it is a commandment for men. Okay, especially if you want to be a priest, you have to be married. So this is another thing which is interesting because, and again, I'm not going to say, okay, this guy is self-interested. But Saturn in the 7th house can also suggest a relationship that has an element of practicality about it, okay? And in her case, particularly also because Ascendant is in Leo, so the 7th house doesn't just contain Saturn, but it also is ruled by Saturn because it's in Aquarius. So this shows two things. First of all, it shows a little bit of delay in marriage. So, I mean, she got married at 28, but she met this person at 27. So I guess there is a little bit of a delay, okay? You can't say it's super delayed, but I guess it depends on the average age of marriage compared to her society. And around here in rural areas, I would say the average age is probably around 25 of marriage, I would say. So it is a little bit delayed, okay? It's definitely, with Saturn there, you can definitely rule out an early marriage, that's for sure, very likely. Not just rule out, but it's actually not recommended. When you see Saturn influencing the 5th or the 7th house from the Ascendant, that is kind of an invitation to postpone marriage after the age of 28. So she's right there. She's right about the Saturn return, close to the Saturn, sorry, not the Saturn return, but, you know, she's close to, yeah, pretty much, actually, she's close to her Saturn return. Because the age of 30 supposedly is actually when you become an adult, according to some ancient cultures, at least. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so looking at the nakshatras, I wanted to see why a priest, you know, why the husband is a priest. How does it show in the nakshatras? So I looked at her partner dispositor. So first of all, Saturn is in the 7th house in the nakshatra of Dhanishta. Dhanishta in itself doesn't necessarily show a person connected to the clergy, but it does show a person who could actually be a good performer. And this is an important thing to remember, okay? And also just Aquarius, remember that Aquarius is the sign of the masses, okay? So this is a sign that has to connect to an audience, or like, you know, to some extent it could show that. So when the spouse is described by Aquarius in general and by Saturn, but especially Aquarius, you could think that this is a person who's going to connect to the masses, you know, somehow. Okay, but just looking by the descendant, you cannot draw conclusions. This is why you have to look more in depth. So, okay, Saturn is in Dhanishta, okay, ruled by Mars. This doesn't necessarily show a person who is going to be very, you know, oriented towards religion. Then you look at Jupiter for her. Jupiter is the husband for a woman, if she's straight. Jupiter is in Hasta nakshatra, which is a nakshatra that is actually connected to priesthood or religious leaders, okay, among other things. It's also connected to teachers, physicians, even astrologers to some extent, or consultants of any kind, okay? But it's actually connected to priests as well, members of religion. Then you look at the Darkarka. The Darkarka Mercury is in Punarvasu Nakshatra. Again, this is a nakshatra where, again, just by doing a simple Google search, actually, you can find typical professions connected to various nakshatras. And you want to look for common denominators. If you see, like, you know, I don't know, you see a list of professions and you see a bunch of them repeating for multiple nakshatras of your dispositors, of your partner dispositors, then you can kind of go, okay, we seem to be getting here somewhere. We seem to be getting somewhere, right? So Mercury in Punarvasu, again, this is a description that I found said males are especially religious. Okay, can be even borderline fanatical. Hopefully this is not the case with this guy. He seems nice, okay? I haven't met him in person, but he seems nice. Okay, definitely a person who is philosophical and lives by ideals. Then you look at Rahu. Rahu is in the nakshatra of Vishaka. Rahu is the co-ruler of the 7th house, okay? Again, ruled by Jupiter. Ideological, can be even militant or agitator. Can also be very religious to the point of fanaticism. Once again, you have the issue of religion and fanaticism. Hopefully this is not the case. Okay, but in any case, right, so you have, let me look at this. Solid, dependable, right, so Saturn, Jupiter, Mercury, Rahu. So out of 4, 3 of the partner signifiers in her natal chart have professions connected to religion. Now, again, I'm not saying, now, just by looking at this, I wouldn't automatically say she's gonna marry a priest, obviously, like, or a preacher or whatever. But I definitely can say that it's a possibility, okay? Like, she could also just as easily have married a philosopher or a professor, a teacher, because you see common themes of a person who is like a guide for the masses, a guide, right? Because that's what a priest is, or a religious person. They address the masses, and they're kind of like, they're like a guide, they're like a spiritual counselor, right? So, yeah, this is pretty mind-boggling. Okay, aside from the fact that 3 out of 4, right, they have actual descriptions connected to religious leaders, spiritual leaders, 2 out of 4 nakshatras of her partner signifiers are ruled by Jupiter, which is the planet of religion. Religion, and again, it could also be teachers, higher philosophy, higher learning, that kind of thing. So it could also have been someone who is like studying philosophy or public speaker or motivational speaker or something like that. But yeah, pretty much it does show a partner that is religious. Okay, even if her partner didn't work in this profession, actually he is actually singing in the church choir, so, and he's also he does a bunch of things. He does things for the community and all that. So this is, yeah, he's very serious about training to be a priest, because it's not like you can just be a priest, you know, like I said, there's like, I don't know, you have to go through the ring of fire or something. And it burns, the ring of fire. I'm kidding. But you know, you have to prove yourself, you know. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so this is the profession, the nature of the spouse. But aside from that, this is where you get clarifications by looking at the upapada lagna. You probably can already realize that I have marked it there very beautifully with the UL. Those of you who have watched the video that I have made on upapada lagna will remember how to calculate it, but just very briefly here, you look at the 12th house. The 12th house is in Cancer. The ruler of the 12th house is the moon, and it's in Gemini. Now, you look at the 12th from the ruler of the 12th house. Okay, the 12th from the 12th is Taurus. Okay, so that's the upapada lagna. Remember, the upapada lagna will give you extra insight into your marital life, the kind of spouse that you're going to be with, the works. Okay, if you want to get more in depth, you can watch the video that I've done. I have talked about it extensively there. So, okay, first of all, what do you notice here? Again, the reinforcement of the spiritual theme. Ketu is in upapada lagna, okay? Rahu is in Scorpio, if you see there. So Ketu will be opposite Rahu in Taurus in the upapada. And if you remember in the video that I made, planets in the upapada lagna itself will show the nature of the spouse. Ketu is the most spiritual influence, okay? So once again, you have the reinforcement of a partner who is very spiritually oriented. Number one. Number two is the ruler of the upapada, Venus, is in the 12th house. Again, the reinforcement of meeting this person in a place of worship. Remember that if you just look, so this is an interesting case where the upapada actually really just, you know, puts the spot on the eye, or like whatever you want to call it. Like it really just pinpoints, okay, where you need to focus. Because if you just look at the D1 chart, remember that the partner signifiers point towards the 2nd house, the 4th house, the 7th house, and the 12th house, okay? So you just by looking at the D1, you might be a little bit confused, right? You might be, okay, this person could meet this person, could meet her spouse in, you know, the family, could meet her spouse in a restaurant, in a vehicle, because the 4th house is also vehicles. It's also, you know, restaurant or close to a kitchen. So there's a variety of options, right? And among them, there's also the 12th house, the 12th house again could have two possible signifiers. Could be foreign lands, or could be places of isolation and worship. And here you have a reinforcement of the 12th house. Okay, because the upapada lagna lord, Venus, is in the 12th from the upapada. And here's the kick of it. She met this person during the pandemic, during the isolation phase of the pandemic, right? When everything was in lockdown. That could also be an interpretation, okay? But obviously she wasn't isolating at that time because she met this person in a church. But she met this person in a place of worship, okay? Because it's reinforced here. Remember I also mentioned in that video that the ruler of the upapada lagna, the position by house, can also indicate where you will meet your spouse. The circumstances surrounding meeting your spouse, okay? So once again, to be fair, you might still think, okay, why didn't she meet this person in a foreign land? Well, my answer would be because you have too much indication that is also connecting to the homeland, okay? You have Jupiter in the 2nd house, and co-ruler of the 7th is Rahu in the 4th house, okay? So you have the 2nd and the 4th houses, which point towards close to home, you know, close to not just home, but the place of origin, you know. Whereas, you know, if you would have had more signifiers like connecting to travel and foreign lands, I would have said, okay, she's gonna meet this person maybe abroad. But here, if you just have, like, you have 2 out of 4 signifiers pointing towards the home base, it's more likely that she's going to meet this person closer to home, okay? And then that's the way that I would reason it. I would think more towards 12th house, meaning places of worship rather than foreign lands, okay? But did I see this from the first try? No. But then I didn't really look for it either in depth. I'm looking at it now in retrospect because I honestly haven't even thought about her love life that much in the past, I don't know how many years, until she just called me like, you know, hey, I'm getting married. Okay. And where was I? Right. So the ruler of the upapada is in the 12th house. Okay. And that's, first of all, this is, remember if I mentioned in that video that this is actually one of the more difficult placements. Hopefully this is not the case, because in her situation, she also has a strong 2nd house from the upapada. And she also has Saturn in the 7th house. See, Saturn in the 7th house in the D1 chart does show a relationship that maybe is a little bit practical, maybe a little bit not overly romantic and more towards responsibility, but it signifies something that is really solid, especially since in this case the 7th house ruler is in the 7th house, right? So Saturn is not just the 7th house ruler, but it's sitting in the 7th house, which really strengthens the durability of the relationship, okay? Aside from that, what we can see is the upapada lagna, where was I? The upapada lagna, right? So the 12th, the 11th, the 10th. The 10th. The 10th could point towards career. That is also another thing. So in his case, the ruler of the 10th is in the 10th. See, from the upapada lagna, which is actually a signifier that this person is. Remember when I mentioned that Saturn is connected to the Abrahamic religions? But to be fair, the Saturn is not just connected to Abrahamic religions, but it's connected to basically any form of hierarchical structure. Okay, so it could be corporations, it could be whatever. But in this case, if you look at the 10th from the upapada lagna, which, remember, like I mentioned in that video, shows the career of the spouse or the social status of the spouse. Okay, so the Saturn is in the 10th house, so ruler of the 10th would be in the 10th. So this is going to show a person who has a slow and steady social climb, and is also going to excel in some kind of hierarchical structure, okay? And also, to a more nasty extent, remember when I said that Saturn is the beggar archetype in Vedic astrology? Well, this is also why it is said that a strong Saturn influence is necessary for politicians. And I would add also people of clergy or clergy members, right? Because a lot of the times the church depends on donations. And for politicians, they're basically begging for votes. That's the logic, okay? So this, for politicians, Saturn and Sun are actually almost equally important. But in general, Saturn can be connected to clergy people because, like I said, so the church also relies heavily on donations, okay? And the co-ruler of the 10th house from the upapada is Rahu, which sits in Vishaka nakshatra. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. I think I am. In Vishaka nakshatra, which is ruled by Jupiter, like I said, and it's also connected to religion again. Right? And it's in the 7th from the upapada. It's in the 7th from the upapada, okay? Which has to do with the masses, and it's actually really another strong placement. So my impression is that her husband is going to be someone who has a very respectable position in society. Why? Because the 7th house is the Bhavad Bhavam of the 10th house, okay? So he has the two co-rulers of the 10th house, as shown by her chart, I don't know his chart, by the way. This is her chart. Shown by her upapada situation, this shows that her spouse is going to rise to a higher position in life, okay? But anyway, I digress, okay? But all I wanted to say was this issue of the circumstances of meeting the spouse and the nature of the spouse is really shown nicely. And another final point that I'm going to make on the upapada is Saturn is aspecting Venus. So the upapada lagna lord, Venus, is aspected by Saturn's 3rd aspect, okay? So this would reinforce the fact that the spouse is going to be older. Remember, like I mentioned, again, if you just look at her D1, there could also be potential confusion around whether she's going to marry an older or a younger spouse. Because Saturn is in the 7th house, and that's a strong placement for a more mature partner. But then she also has considerable influence of Mercury on the spouse archetype, right? Dharakarka is Mercury, Jupiter is in Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury. So it could have been either way, or it could have been somewhere midway. But if you look at her upapada, again, the upapada lagna lord, which shows the nature of the spouse, reinforces the theme that this is someone older. Or at least mature, okay? But generally, with Saturn, you're looking at an older spouse, okay? And yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Okay, with respect to her upapada and meeting place and all that. Oh, and another thing is that the upapada lagna lord Venus is in Bharani nakshatra, which is actually another. Bharani is another nakshatra that is also very connected to spirituality. Maybe not so much religion in the organized sense, but it is a spiritual energy. And it's also particularly connected to death. And remember that priests also have to conduct funerals, among other things. Okay. So that's what I wanted to say. And now moving to the last but not least point, the timing. Okay, this is the theoretical part that you have been waiting for, I bet. Okay, so with respect to, first of all, I'm going to give you the list of the key things to look at when it comes to meeting a person of significance with respect to starting a serious long-term relationship. And could also be the same aspects that go for meeting the right person or a person of significance also stand for actual marriage. So the timing of the actual marriage, okay? So once again, remember, I'm gonna give you the whole detail thing, okay? The lists and everything. So key things to look at with respect to timing of marriage and or meeting a significant other, okay? You want to look for transits of Saturn, Jupiter, Rahu, and Ketu, or Ketu. And connections to the partner signifiers, as I have described them before. So just to remind you what I'm talking about, okay, what are the partner signifiers that you want to look for? The ruler of the 7th house, and the 7th house itself, the ruler of the 5th house and the 5th house itself, the Darakarka, which is the planet with the lowest degree, minus Rahu or Ketu, okay? I don't take Rahu and Ketu to be potentially Darakarka. Now, some astrologers do, but I don't. Jupiter and potentially Mars for women. Venus for men. And actually, you can go for Venus for women as well to some extent, but not to some extent, okay? Because Venus in general is the signifier of marriage. It's the natural ruler of the 7th house. And a mention here is that if you are gay, again, you should go for the energy that you identify most with. So if you identify as more feminine, you should go for the signifiers. You should go for Jupiter as the husband signifier. And if you identify as more masculine, you should go for Venus as the main signifier of the wife. The rest of the signifiers will stay the same, okay? And just a short another mention, remember that the 5th house has to do with what you want in a relationship. So the 5th house is the house of romance, so not so much marriage. So it could be, again, and that if you have mostly 5th house activation, maybe this could be, of course, a great romance, but it may or may not turn into a marriage depending on what else is going on there, okay? So ideally, you want to also have the 7th house activated to look for a potential long-term / marriage partner, okay? And another mention is Mars for women, same thing. To some extent, Mars shows passion, okay? So if you just have your Mars activated by transit, you could have a passionate affair, or you could find someone to be madly in love with, but whether or not it's going to turn into a serious relationship, it will depend largely on other contacts to the 7th house especially, or the 7th house lord, or the other partner signifiers that don't have to do with Mars or the 5th house, okay? So this is what I wanted to say. Another thing that you want to look for is Rahu Ketu aspecting the 7th house in the D9 chart, or the Navamsha chart. This is another thing. Okay, so you want to look for all the things that I have mentioned, and just give yourself 1 point for each, okay? And if you have at least 3, this is a significant time to meet someone or to get married if you're already in a relationship and you're trying to figure out when this person is going to propose or when is a good time to get married, okay? You want to have at least 3 of these, and it's going to show a strong emphasis, okay? The more of these you have, the stronger the transits are going to be for you to meet someone or to get married, okay? And in her case, okay, she met him when Saturn in Capricorn was going through the 6th house, aspecting Mercury by opposition. Okay, Mercury being her Darakarka. So that's one point. Transiting Rahu in Gemini was going through her D9 lagna. I haven't shown her D9 because what's the point? But I'll tell you, okay, her D9 lagna is in Gemini. So so Rahu, when she met this, her partner, Rahu was going through Gemini and going through her D9. So aspecting the 7th from her D9 by opposition. Transiting Jupiter in Sagittarius was going through her 5th house, so the 5th house was activated as well. Transiting Rahu, aspecting her 5th house by opposition, also aspecting her 7th house, and Saturn, ruler of her 7th, by 9th aspect. Okay, so just by, if you do the math here, she has 6 points of activation through transits for her different partner signifiers, okay? And she met this person shortly after, almost immediately, they started a relationship, they started dating, and within 6 months, they got engaged, okay? And once again, when she got married, last week, transiting Rahu in Taurus, aspecting her 7th lord, Rahu by opposition, was also aspecting Jupiter by 5th aspect. Transiting Saturn in Capricorn, conjunct Jupiter in Capricorn by transit, both of them transiting, not her natal placements. Both of them opposite her Darakaraka, Mercury in Cancer by opposition. Transiting Jupiter in Capricorn also aspects her natal Jupiter by 9th aspect. So again, in total, if you do the math, she has 5 points of activation for her partner signifiers by transit, okay, at the time of marriage. So, yeah, what can I say? Now, again, like I said, I mentioned this, I'm trying not to be fatalistic, and I am not fatalistic, okay? I do not believe in fatalism, but if it is written, it is written, okay? As above, so below. Like I mentioned it multiple times, I've never seen this stuff not working, okay? Unless the person doesn't know their time of birth accurately, and they expect you to just guess, then there might be errors in interpretation. Otherwise, very few cases, and I don't feel like going over this right now, but there are very few cases where you can actually improve your karma to such an extent that your chart will be, you can bypass your chart and your karma. If you clear your karma, you're given more freedom. But I won't talk about this right now. So why did I want to present this? 2 main reasons. First of all, I think it's an excellent case study of everything, the whole partner analysis, the whole partner archetype in the natal chart analysis, and also activation by transit. But it's also, I think, a happy story because, because of the pandemic, I think a lot of people, I've heard this over and over, a lot of people are like, oh my god, it's the end of the world, and why is our generation so affected? Whatever your generation is. But this is a happy situation, okay? Because I actually thought about this ironically, because this pandemic has actually just fulfilled all her wishes. Like, for years, I have been hearing this woman saying things like, oh my god, I want to move back home, but I can't get a job back home. And I also want to meet someone and start a family and all that. And boom, the pandemic happened. Within a few months, she met the love of her life and she went back home. She's now, he is in, her hometown, obviously. And I don't know exactly what the plans are, if they're going to stay with her parents or whatever. But her parents have a nice big house. And she's happy now. She's happy. She has the whole thing now. And good for her. Wishing her all the best, sending good vibes. And yeah, I think it's an uplifting story, okay? Because, you see, if it's written, it's written. And it's really interesting in her case because, like I mentioned, she has all this 12th house significance connected to her partner signifier. So it's almost as if it took the pandemic for her partner to appear out of the mist. I don't know. Like, that would be this. It's a little bit too creepy to think about. Like, anyway. Okay. So this has been it, and once again, I really hope you have enjoyed it. And if you have, please like, please subscribe, hit the notifications bell to see when I will post a new video, and also please continue to watch the ads if you want to support my channel for free, and thank you for doing so. And also, again, if you're interested in a personal consultation, I do consultations on a wide variety of topics. Please check out the video description. I will leave my contact information there. Thank you.